going to do. Sorry to the one viewer who got booted out maybe right there.
All that why I've never gotten into it. I don't know the first thing about like video quality, audio. Just like plug in a Yeti mic and hope it sounds better.
Yeti mics are nice. I will say though that it's a very friendly introduction. Like one of the reasons why I got into streaming is because no one expects you when you're new or even not new to have like studio quality. It's just some rando coding on a thing, and I learned the hard way, and people helped me, which was really nice of them. Yeah. What have you been up to lately?
Oh man, packing. So as we chatted, we are moving back to PA. So I'm pumped. We're gonna be doing the PhillyJS website today, but we'll be back closer to Philly, so I should get to more of those meetups, which I'm excited about. But yeah, we've been this summer. Like spring was busy. We were traveling and conference season and all that kind of stuff. And then once that dialed down, we started looking for houses in like May, kind of April, May timeframe, and like looked at houses every weekend for like 2 months straight, and then like finally landed a house in June. And then we've been packing since then, and we just settled last week, and we move in 2 weeks. Wow. So, and after that, we get into the house, and then we're having a baby in November, our first kid. So there's a lot going on this year. we've been busy packing and picking out paint colors and cribs and all that good stuff.
That's wild. We've been talking about how we also want to, do the whole family thing, and we're moving to Boston, away from you specifically.
I was going to say, right as I come back to Philly, you guys are taking off.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll see you at Liberty JS next year, maybe. The timing of having a one person be pregnant and then having a baby in a currently searching for, then finding, then moving into a house, that sounds incredibly stressful. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think
wow.
It's the timing is like just the baby's coming just far enough after the move that it wasn't awful. So like my wife is really good at like packing ahead of time. Like I'm super OCD about some things. She's super OCD about like packing up like the kitchen and that kind of stuff. So she started packing like probably 2 months ago, like knowing that we were going to move. She started like packing little by little when she was 3 or 4 months pregnant. So she wasn't feeling too bad yet. And now she's like just over 6 months. And now she's getting to the point that like packing is hard, but she's almost completely packed. So like she got all that done early. And now the move, like that movers will take all the big stuff. And then we can get in there, and like unpacking will be mostly me, I imagine. And then she can just go into like full nesting mode, like mid-August.
That's awesome. That's so smart. Yeah. I really like that.
It did. I mean, certainly by no means did we like plan this timeline out, but I think the way it all kind of worked out is better than it could have been. If we were like moving when she was 8.5 months pregnant, we'd be a lot more stressed.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like even in couples where the people work well together, it is nice to be able to say like one person does this area, the other person does that area. Yeah. So you don't step on each other's toes. And you have, I guess, accidentally kind of done that.
I do like the office and desk and bookshelves and garage with all of the like bikes hanging on the wall and all that. And and she does like the picture frames in the kitchen and like the guest bedroom. Like, there's a nice split there.
Nice. Yeah, we've moved once a year or two, mostly a year for the last decade. So we're really, I don't know if you relate to this. We're hoping no more. This is the last one.
my brother has a quote from his most recent move. They moved into their current house, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago at this point, but he was like, I'm moving out of this house feet first. Like I'm going out. I'm here till I die.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've done similar. I moved a lot when I was a little bit younger. Like when I went back to grad school, finished grad school, I did the same thing. I moved like once a year for 6 or 7 years. And then I landed in downtown Philly, and I was like, I'm not leaving. So I was there for like 8 years in that same apartment. And then we've moved twice since then in the past like 6 years.
Wow.
So now,
really nice.
Same thing. We want to go in here and just stay for a very long time.
I want to dive into that. I have questions on downtown Philly and such.
Oh yeah.
We've been here 10 minutes. This is a good segue point. Matt, who are you?
Who am I? Matt Brophy. I work for Shopify on the Remix team. So I've been there since the acquisition for it's about 2 years ago now. I think it was August 2022. Prior to that, I was just with the Remix team for about a year before the acquisition, and then before that, Urban Outfitters in Philly, which is where I get my Philly roots. I was there for about 7 or 8 years building their e-commerce sites.
Okay.
So that was my Vue job. Then we were writing everything there in Vue SSR, and then it was a big switch over to the React world, joining the Remix team. But yeah, been working a lot on React Router and Remix the last 3 years and loving it.
Cool. I'm going to, throughout the stream, shout out people in the chat. Hey, learner, you're not too late at all. Thank you for joining. I used to do Tuesdays, I think it was 2:30 Eastern, and Thursdays 10 Eastern. So glad to do an early Tuesday stream for once.
Gotcha.
You mentioned grad school. What did you do undergrad and grad in?
Computer science. So I went to Lehigh up in Bethlehem, so like hour and a half or so north of Philly. I did a computer science and business undergrad. Came out of there right at like the Enron timeframe, if you remember that. And there was like the whole Congress passed this Sarbanes-Oxley like stuff to make sure that Enron couldn't happen again. Essentially, like accounting computer systems had to be audited, just like your financial statements had to be audited. So like this program was really catered to that, and like I came out of there and did a job with Big Four accounting for a year and just absolutely hated it. Like it was awful. You were just like screenshotting computer security settings, like make sure that passwords have to be 10 characters and changed every 6 months. And you would like literally have to go around to people's desks and get a screenshot and like put it in the file that would get sent off to like the IRS to make sure that companies were secure. So I did that for a year, and then knew that I wanted to get out and get like back into coding. So I was able to go back to Lehigh, take a TA position with my old advisor. So I was able to go back to grad school with my TA thing covering it. So thankfully, no more student loans. I did a master's in computer science for 2 years in like 2010.
Remind me, what was the Enron thing?
It was just a huge like financial scam thing. They were cooking the books. And a lot of it came down to like nothing was actually making sure the computer systems were secure, that like tracked all their accounting statements and all that. Mm-hmm. So it was 2000 and gosh, I went to college. I went to undergrad in 2002. Enron must have happened right around like 2000 or so. But that's when like all of that legislation got passed, and then Lehigh was like, oh, like let's make this combined computer science and business program that kind of fits this new niche need in the market for people who are like technically savvy but also kind of get the business side of things. Mm-hmm. But I was it was interesting, but I always like knew I wanted to be on the programming side.
Yeah. What is it about the I'm like entering podcasting mode now. What is it about the programming side that makes you excited? That's brought you to things like web dev tooling and Remix?
Oh man, I don't know. Just like I love the feeling of writing code and like seeing it work. I started coding. I had an uncle who did web dev, got me into it at like middle school age. Like he noticed something that I was like interested in computers, and he bought the first computer that like went in my family living room or whatever. And he started teaching me like Perl and C++ then. Wow. And like ever since then, I've just loved coding. So, but web specifically, like the website is, it's like you can see it, right? I've done a little bit of back end coding, but I get a lot more enjoyment out of the web stuff where like I can point to something that anyone can pull up on a phone or a website and be like, oh, I built that.
Yeah. Now that you're working on Remix, do you ever feel that with arbitrarily written in Remix websites that you had a part of it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I love pointing to like, because it used to be like when I worked for Urban Outfitters, it was awesome to be like, oh, look, like anthropology.com or urbanoutfitters.com. Like I had a hand in building that. That was cool. And like I could tell people like, oh, you shopped on Urban Outfitters. Like you've used the thing that I built with something like working on Remix and React Router. You get to say that about a lot more websites. You're like, oh, cool. Like that website uses Remix or that website uses React Router. So it's a little more of like that, the things you kind of have your hands indirectly in is much bigger.
Yeah. You also indirectly had your hand in phillyjs.club when you were here. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Joe and I started that right after COVID. It was sort of like, we both had an idea for starting a meetup at the same time and like found each other through the Philly Slack. But I had just joined Remix in, when was that? early 2022, I guess. And Remix has a bunch of meetups in different cities around the US and around the world that are just Remix focused meetups that meet monthly. And I was trying to start a Philly Remix meetup. So I was just sort of like throwing feelers out in the Philly Slack and was like, hey, would people be interested? If I started up a Remix meetup, would folks want to come to that on a monthly basis? And Joe was looking to create just more of a JavaScript focused meetup to replace the prior one that had kind of fizzled out over COVID, and nothing had like started back up yet again. So Joe and I met up down in Philly over coffee one morning and just chatted and decided that like we would get more of a turnout with a more generic JavaScript focused one. And then we could certainly cover, Remix and React Router content in there from time to time. Wow. And then I moved to Delaware like a month later. We started this meetup and I went to the first like 2 of them. And then all of a sudden, like kind of quick turnaround, my wife and I decided to move down here. And it was like, well, I'm going to not make it to as many meetups for a bit.
There's a sad humor point here that Joe is one of the nicest, kindest, most thoughtful, caring people ever. And people keep moving away from him. I'm moving to Boston, and he really deeply cares about phillyjs Club. He's now currently like the lead organizer, the person who does a lot, one of them. But with you moving back and him moving to Richmond, what are the chances you think of you becoming the phillyjs Club? At least
so I would like to I'd like to be there more often, but I have attempted in the past to start and run a meetup and failed. So I started a Philly View meetup back when I was at Urban in maybe 2018 or so. And we kind of did monthly things or every other month for maybe 6 months. I was not very good at staying on top of it. I was unable to find a lot of speakers. So it mostly ended up being like myself or other Urban Outfitters employees who were writing views speaking each month. And it was kind of just like the same 4 or 5 of us going each month and speaking. And we got, a couple of other people, but I wouldn't call it successful. So I don't know that I'll take over like an actual organizer role, but I would love to be there more often and speak more often. But I don't know that organizing is my strength.
It's hard. I think a lot of it is predicated on who you can just coincidentally find at that time in their life at that location, and if you get some people who can fill in the parts you're not, up for yourself, great. Not such is life.
Yeah. Joe's really good at it. And I've actually learned our Brooks librarian on the Remix team just joined us maybe 6 months or so ago, but he prior to joining the team was running like I think the biggest Remix meetup down in Austin, Texas, and he's done a really good job growing that thing to like they'll have meetups that are 50 to 100 people, like huge turnouts. So I've been meaning to pick his brain a little bit, but I think there's a personality required to be successful at running a meetup. Joe has it, Brooks has it. I don't think I have it. You have to be like very extroverted, and I think I tend to lean more to the introverted side.
Yeah. I just posted the link to Remix Austin in the chat. And you know what? While I'm here, might as well post the link to the phillyjs Club meetup in the I said Slack on instinct on the stream chat. Great. So let's transition a bit over. You work on Remix now, just for folks who haven't heard of or played with it, probably just the not played with it yet. What is Remix and what is React Router?
So pretty soon they're the same thing. If you follow that whole thing, we are sort of rebranding. But so most people in the React world know what React Router is, right? It's a generally used as a client side SPA router for React apps. Started in 2014 or so by Michael and Ryan. Heavily used. I think it's last time we checked, it's like 9 or 10 million downloads a week on NPM or something like that. So it's kind of well known for client side SPAs. When COVID hit, Michael and Ryan's Remix or React training company sort of went kaput because there was no more like, let's travel around the country and go to companies and teach them how to use React. So they started building Remix, which was sort of their vision of what would a server-side rendered implementation of React Router be, not knowing where it would go. And I think because they were charging for it initially, it was initially a subscriber-based model. They branded it Remix, but really at the end of the day, like Remix has always been compiler and server-side runtime for React Router. And over the past couple of years, since I joined the team and stuff, we've been like pulling pieces of Remix, the server-side renderer and the compiler, back into React Router. So we shipped a lot of the like Remix data loading features in React Router in 6.4. And at this point, as of this year, Remix is now just like a Vite plugin that gives React Router all this extra capability. So in React Router v7, which we're working on now, Remix is just going to fully get sort of absorbed into React Router. So React Router v7 will now just have a Vite plugin that gives you the server-side rendering of Remix.
Wow. How hang on a second. Remix used to use, what was it, an ES build based compiler build stuff? What went on there?
Remix has had 3 compilers at this point. I think before it was open source, when it was still closed source subscriber model, it was actually using Rollup, I believe. It moved to just using ES build when it went open source, and I wasn't around to speak too much on like the reasoning behind that. And then eventually, just about a year ago, maybe we moved over to Vite, and that was really just because like we ended up trying to build like all of these different little plugins and capabilities on top of ES build, and we were sort of like building a new Vite, right? It was like we're trying to build all these things that like Vite already did. And it turns out that there's some very hard problems to solve in that space. And Remix isn't meant to be like, we're not a compiler, right? We're spending all this time trying to like solve compiler problems because ES build is so low level that, the writing on the wall was kind of like, if we just like use Vite, we could spend less time thinking about compiler issues and we could spend more time thinking about like data loading and routing and the things that Remix really shines at.
Yeah. I love that. Also, shout in the chat, Todd Libby, 3 lobster emojis.
Hey,
Welcome, Todd. Cool. One of the trends that I think a lot of the Remix folks and docs have talked about is that you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not like reinventing web standards or how the web does things, or sorry for the shade, patching the global fetch. You're just doing the things that you're meant to be doing and letting the right way of everything shine through. So you now have turned into this situation where you're taking the dedicated builder Vite and taking the dedicated web platform. So what right now is the difference between Remix and React Router?
Like right now, so Remix is in V2 currently. React Router is V6. Remix, the only code that lives like exclusively in the Remix repo right now is the Vite plugin, which knows how to take like a Remix route module file, which we'll look at in the phillyjs stuff. That's where you define like your loader to load data for your route, the component to render for that route. That Vite plugin turns those files on disk into a React Router route tree and sort of compiles them into a server-side version of that route and a client-side version of that route. And then the actual server runtime portion itself, which is how do I take in a fetch request and decide, what routes should I call the loaders for, and how do I render out the resulting HTML for that page? That server runtime portion is still Remix specific.
Cool.
But both of those are kind of the 2 main pieces that are getting absorbed into React Router. So rather than like import from Remix run /node as you do today in V2, you'll import from React Router /node in V7.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
For so many years, we saw meta frameworks like Remix, like Astro, Next.js as these huge monoliths that do so much for you. That they do, server-side rendering and now streaming, React server components and such, and forms and data. But in actuality, you're turning this, or at least I think the industry is turning this into a little bit more of a kind of a standardized approach, where there are some expectations we have of being able to say server render and stream data that you're showing is kind of table stakes now.
Yeah, and really what's happening is like React is taking over a lot of that core stuff. So we're seeing a lot of the ideas that Remix came out with a couple of years ago getting sort of upstreamed into React in slightly different ways, slightly different APIs to fit React's composability model. But Remix has had this way of like submitting forms and doing optimistic UI and pending UI, and React now has like use optimistic and use action state and forget the other hooks that are in 19 off the top of my head, but we're seeing more of that stuff align in the core React part. So the meta frameworks now aren't necessarily doing that type of stuff anymore. They can kind of step up to a higher level and let React handle some of that primitive stuff.
I almost feel bad for the React team here because they put so much work into this. And you're right, taking it into React Core, using the learnings from the meta frameworks makes for a simpler and better, easier meta framework. But a lot of users don't see this. This is not user facing for the end React developer.
Yeah.
So they don't see
I think
massive upgrades.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is like it's a hard problem to solve. And so these things that React has pulled into the core are really hard problems, and they're sometimes tricky APIs to use. So like the average end user isn't going and just like implementing server components on their own, right? There's still a lot of work to be done to make server components work. So the meta frameworks will be doing that heavy lifting, and then you'll just use Remix or Next or whomever, and server components will be built in. But yeah, there some of the stuff React has now is they've shipped really good low-level primitives that meta frameworks can build on top of. They're not necessarily the things that the end user will always use directly.
Yeah. I've been posting relevant links in the chat. Latest one is just the React 9 blog post from April 25th. Cool. Okay. So let's talk. Actually, before we talk about phillyjs, anything else you wanted to bring up before we move
on? No, I don't think so. I think one of the big things that hopefully we'll see from what we're going to do on the stream, but one of the big things that we really take pride in with this React Router v7 thing is like we want easy incremental migrations, right? So we've all been there in the past where a new version of your framework or meta framework or library comes out, a new major version, and it's weeks or months of effort to upgrade, and you can't just like tell your boss we're going to stop shipping features while we upgrade to the next version. So we're really trying hard to make sure that like we don't just drop this new version and folks have to like stop everything and spend a whole bunch of time getting upgraded. We want to make sure that everything we push out can be adopted like incrementally, so you can make a little change, merge it to main, ship it, make another change, merge it to main, ship it. So hopefully some of that will show through, and this like little phillyjs upgrade we're going to do will be straightforward enough. But I would point to our can I chat in this thing?
Yeah.
Let me find the remix run.
Oh no! Apparently, I swear to God, apparently there is an echo. I hate this.
Uh-oh.
I hate it so much. I hate Twitch. Matt, can you say something so I can test?
Yep. Yeah. Is it coming from my side?
Oh my God! I think it was coming from my side.
Oh, from my end. There we go.
Great. I think it was my end reflecting your end.
Okay.
Which is great.
Any better, Todd?
Thank you, folks in the chat.
I just dropped the blog post on our future flags. So that's sort of that's worth a read. But that's kind of the approach we're taking to make sure that these upgrades like remain easy and incremental.
Awesome. Sorry about the echo, folks. Thank you for letting us know. Glad it's fixed. And congrats on the first time chat, Matt. Welcome to Twitch streaming.
Yeah, this is. I think I did have an account. We were talking before we started here. I turns out I had an account which I think I made to watch someone else stream in the past couple of months. But yeah, this is my first time streaming on Twitch.
Yeah. Wild. I'm just looking through this post now. I forgot how good your diagrams are. Your meme game and visual image game in your post is fantastic. Look at this freaking classic Spider-Man.
That's what is it? Excalidraw makes it so easy. It's like the handwritten scribbly stuff. Yeah, Excalidraw is really good for that.
Love it. Awesome. Future flags. Oh, Philly ETE 2016. That's a great conference.
Yeah, that's where that idea came from. At least on my end, that was a really, really good talk I remember seeing.
Awesome. I want to quickly, before we move on, shout out the two. Please, someone let me know if I'm missing them. Two big conferences that I know of in Philly for devs in our area: Emerging Tech East and Liberty JS. Great.
That's right. They renamed Emerging Tech East.
What were they previously?
Philly, it was Emerging Technologies for the Enterprise. Philly ETE is now Emerging Tech East. Yeah.
They wanted less of the enterprise skew, I'm guessing?
I think so. I mean, that was like, they were one of my complaints. I'm not a complaint, but like for me as a developer, I wasn't, I'm not in management. I'm not on like a CTO role or anything like that. They always did have a lot of, like, they had tracks for director level stuff, and they had tracks for like agile process management. So really, I think that's where their like technology for the enterprise came in. But when I would go as a developer, there was like one developer track. So like, and it was like a quarter of all the
Got it.
talk. So the stuff that I wanted to see was always like a little bit limited. So I'd find slots where I was like, like there's not really a good talk that I'm interested in this slot because a lot of it is in areas that I'm not focused in. But the emerging part has always been true. Like they've always been focused on up and coming stuff. So these days you don't see a lot of React at that conference because it's no longer an emerging technology. It's just sort of there.
Yeah. Um, there was a great talk, actually quite a few great talks. One on brain computer interfaces that I thought was, I had
Okay.
never seen this type of thing at a dev conference before. I was really excited about. This guy was fantastic,
Cool.
Scott. I've been meaning to reach out to him just to express positivity. BCIs. Oh yeah,
Very.
question from Todd: is Barcamp Philly still going on?
That happened this year. It got. I only know that because I was. I think I was like in the Slack channel because I was hoping to make it. But yeah, it shut down for a while. I think, and this year was the first year they had it in I think a number of years. And so yeah, I think
Awesome.
they intend to keep it going.
Great. I actually helped a little bit with the website.
Oh,
A
cool.
little bit. I don't think I did a whole lot. So it was I'm glad it worked out. Yeah. Cool. So yeah. Now that we're talking about Philly things, I think we're finally ready to segue to Philly JS now that it's 10:30
All
in the
right.
morning our time. So Philly JS, look at this. By the way, this is one of the few times I feel comfortable bragging. I'm so proud of this freaking website design. It brings me so much freaking joy. We actually, in a literal sense, almost literal sense, copy and pasted it for Boston TS Club, because I was lazy and I didn't want to spend too much time
Wait,
on things. And I've
copy
been
and
meaning
pasted
to
it
kind of,
to Boston TS Club, right? To or
yeah,
from?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
two.
yeah. Okay.
Philly came first, and now I'm
Yes.
moving to Boston and starting
Yeah,
up
yeah,
the
yeah.
club. It's so silly and it's so
But
simple
it's
and
such a
it's so
cool
easy to
like
implement.
yeah. I mean, it's such a cool take on like the JS logo is what inspired like the Philly JS like icon, and then the website just sort of like morphed out of that.
Yeah, we did a bunch of explorations. Trying to find where the icon is in the source. Help me out here, Matt. You know VX better than
Oh.
I do. Where's the favicon?
Public favicon. There you go.
Public
In the repo.
Philly J. Oh, right. So yeah, public favicon was like PNG image. You know what? I'm just gonna do what you said. The repo.
Oh yeah, there's logos in there too. There's much
We
bigger.
never
Yeah,
actually
there's a
linked to
bigger
the repos.
logo.png.
Yeah. So we have this Philly Jazz Club website repo, and right now, oh yeah, public favicon ICO, no logo PNG. There's an SVG too. Yeah, it's just the JS logo. I'm always
Yeah.
surprised that more meetups don't do this. It's such a low hanging, easy to implement fruit for a logo.
There you go.
Anyway,
And I dropped a link to the
awesome.
logo itself as well in there.
Thanks. Great. So yeah, so this is a remix site. It's set up with a bunch of the nice like little dev utilities that I use. Oh, we got to get you on the contributors list since you authored a PR recently.
Yeah, do it.
Co-founded the club. But yeah,
I'm in like the what is it? Organizers, past organizers section or something on there somewhere.
yeah,
There's a shout out somewhere on there for me.
there it is.
Yeah.
There's an open PR to put me in there that suspiciously no one has looked at. Uh,
I'm not gonna let you leave. Like, no, you have to stay.
oh well, I'll take on some tasks.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm just gonna get pull from the latest. Yeah, get
Yep.
PMPMI clear. We use PNPM. Love PNPM. It's like NPM but faster and more symlinks. Great. So PNPM dev. We're already on the current, not the next stuff you're talking about, but the current remix. So if I open
Yeah.
localhost,
Yeah. I think the main branch is on the latest release 2.10.2. And I believe is all switched over to use our new like single fetch data fetching future flag.
look at that. Tell me you work at a framework without telling me you work at a framework. You know the minor and the patch of the current.
Oh yeah, yeah. I do our releases, so I actually run the release process. So I'm always way too familiar with like what our current semver is.
That's great. And yeah, thanks to the PR, which actually send in the chat too. Brof Dog, here we go. You and I have been working on some stuff. Most of this code was written by you, and then I touched up some too, shamelessly taking credit on the GitHub history. We're on Vite and stuff. So if you look, like you said, it's not even a remix config. There's no remix dot anything in the repo. It's just Vite with some plugins.
Yeah, that's been a really nice part of moving over to that. Is like less and less stuff feels like remix specific in there. It's just a Vite app, and so many more people are familiar with what you can do in there, and all the other Vite plugins that you would use can mostly come along.
Yeah, and like look at, by the way, just for those who haven't had the pleasure of like a real time and dev environment for front end site, hot module reloading with, is that still the term we use? Just to you save a file and it shows up.
Yeah, there's a new term that I'm not going to claim that like we invented it, but it was the first I heard it when we started thinking about it back in our ES build one. But so hot module reloading is I change a JS file and I want that new React component to update on the screen without a reload, right? So reload this JS module. But in a Remix app, you have these loaders per route, which run before we render anything, and we load all the data that you would need to render that route. And if you change a loader in a dev environment, we don't just need the new module. We have to actually like rerun that loader on the server and like get fresh data for the route. You may have added a new field to your JSON response for that route, and your component relies on that new field. So we have to like run it one more time. We call that hot data reloading. HDR is our term for that. Yeah. So that like getting a Remix app that you can work and get that like quick feedback loop. You need both of those working together so that if you're changing the data that feeds into your component, you get an updated version of that as well.
Cool. And that's working. I'm just showing off very basic. We have routes / index, which, as one might guess from the name, is the root index. We have a loader here, which imports events JSON from events.json. That's where we store the actual events on the site. We then take all the events mapping date to new dates, because JSON to JavaScript, check anything 6 weeks in the future, and then find any event where the date is greater than now, so whenever we're building the site, and less than 6 weeks in the future. And voila.
Do we have can I ask a dumb streaming question?
Yeah.
Should I be able to see your screen in my output here?
Oh dear. Yes, you are on my Twitch. What do they call it? Either guest star or stream together, and you should be able to see it in that view.
So I just see you and me. I see our two cameras.
Well, that's unfortunate. You can tune into the public stream, but I would prefer you not to be delayed by a little bit. So let me.
Can I change? I see a drop down for like group capture output tiled, which is just putting you and me next to each other. But if I change that,
I see what happened. I see. Oh boy. I hate this. I hate this. Right.
There we go.
I've booted you out. I booted you out twice now, Matt.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I'm back.
Great.
Hey, so there we go. Now I can see a screen.
Yeah, I switched it to share from my local and turned it off on the guest star and didn't mentally connect that. Yes, that's what you were looking at.
Okay.
Thank you. Something. Folks in the audience, we did it.
Streaming is hard.
I love this so much. Doing it live.
Trust me, if I were, this is good that you're driving here, because I would not be able to do this via the Twitch interface.
Oh my gosh. For such a successful company, I think that's why the interface is hard to use. They have no strong competitors. Like YouTube isn't competing seriously with them right now. They're trying. It's not going great. So what do they care? All right. They are making it better though. Stream Together simplifies a lot of stuff. So props to the Twitch folks for that. That really makes my life easier. You should have seen the Microsoft Teams based interface I was going with before Stream Together.
What does Stream Together do? Does that let me also like share my screen too?
Yeah, it's what we're using.
Okay.
It's alternately called Guest Star or Stream Together. It's
Yes.
just a built-in way to combine stuff that you can then put to a capture service like OBS, and
Cool.
OBS is what's actually streaming to Twitch.
Okay.
Cool. I love it. Oh, got my little hide there. Awesome. So the big feature request that I had on Remix for ages was I want to be able to server side not just render but like generate a static site, because the way at the very least Boston TS.club was deployed for a while, and phillyjs I think similar, is that it's just a static site. We don't need a running server. A running server would actually be bad for us because that's extra cost that we don't want to play.
Yeah.
So what's going on there, Matt? How you helping us here?
Yeah. So I'm gonna drop another link in the chat here. Where is it? Boston TS party. That would be great. So yeah. So
I love it.
We've we as the remix team, I feel like we've always been a little like, one, we tend to think that remix was built to get sort of like past the age of statically generated sites that you would get with Gatsby and other tools like that, because there's just so much like more you can do with a running server when it comes to like actual dynamic web apps. So if you want to do like personalization on an e-commerce site, you want to load different products for different users, you want to do like search pages that don't have to like render a static shell, like actual search pages that render on the server. So like Remix obviously has thought that like you're going to get the best overall UX and app performance from a running server. So SSG was like not something we were focused on early, but it became pretty obvious over time that like there is still a big desire for this. Like it's an architecture that's very popular for a lot of very good reasons. Like you said, like I don't want to pay for a running server. I have a simple site that doesn't actually have dynamic data. It doesn't have logged in users or anything like that. But then, this repo that I just dropped that you pulled up, like we were sort of always like, like you can statically generate a remix site. Like a statically generated site is just crawl these pages and save the HTML to disk. Right. So this repo is a couple different examples that I've put together over time when people would come along and be like, why can't I statically generate my site with Remix? Like I would point them to this. You'd be like, well, you can. It's not a one-line config change, but it's also not weeks worth of work, right? Like you can whip this together in a matter of like an hour or two. The easiest way to do it, which is what we do for the phillyjs site today, is build your Remix site and then hit it with wget or curl, right? Like you don't have to go, like this has a little node script that spiders the page and finds all the outgoing links and adds them to a queue and crawls them. But if like the phillyjs.club site is like, yeah, there you go, 3 statically generated pages. So that is kind of what we recommended for a while. Like if you want to statically generate your remix site, like go for it. That's awesome. Like you just build a remix site and then you hit it with wget a couple times and dump those on your host and you're done. But it's it's one of those things that people want it, and it's very easy for us to add, especially with a couple of new features we shipped in the past like year that we were like, it's kind of dumb to not have it as a first class API on our end. So we added it in React Router v7. It'll ship in 7.0, but what we're going to play with today is the very, very alpha version of that, the nightly build off our dev branch.
Cool. Wait, so just to be clear, also, first of all, thank you, Brooks, for the chat. I also am happy to see the Brof dog on a stream, and calling it Boston TS Party was so tempting. So tempting. It's so funny and so good. But yeah, no, Matt, just to be clear, you're saying phrases like alpha release and nightlies. This is not stable yet. No one should go home and think I can use this right now in production with no issues expected. This is early stuff. Yeah,
definitely not. Yeah, this isn't even an official alpha release. Like we just have nightly builds off of our dev branch. So this is going to be a nightly build off of the dev branch. So hopefully nothing got committed yesterday. Because I tested this yesterday with I did this maybe 3 months ago when we first shipped pre-rendering. When you and I had first talked about it and talked about getting on a stream, I did it like then. And yesterday I was like, you know what? We've merged a lot of stuff to the dev branch in the last 3 months or 2 months or whatever. Like, I should make sure the nightly build still works. So I tested it yesterday. Everything was fine. And hopefully nothing went in yesterday that went into last night's nightly build at like midnight or whatever time it is, so that today's won't work.
I have 2 questions. One, which repo should I be looking at for nightly build commits?
For React Router?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
React
the
Router.
React Router. It's under Remix Run, the organization.
Oh, cool. Thanks. And then, oh, there it is. Second question. Todd wants to know, between shipping and now, did you hire anyone from CloudStrike? And if so, would that be a difficult thing for us?
No, it's just been me toying around with it.
Okay. All right. Well, the main branch doesn't have anything since last week. Was there a
dev
branch?
So, yeah, V7's all going on the dev branch.
All right.
That's my phone. It apparently rings on my computer too.
Nice. Oh yeah, I know some people, speaking of learners, thinking in the chat, who were stranded in an airport for days. Ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds
cool.
unfun.
Well, shout out, by the way, Mark Daglish, one of my other very favorite people in Remix Land, last week. So we're good. No risk.
All right. So yesterday's build should be the same as today's build.
So what do I do?
So let's start real quick. I want to look at the current site as it is today, and just touch a little bit on 2 of the features that we have that kind of enable some of this like SSG stuff. So if you open the site, if you want to pull up like your network tab too in the browser there, and then just like, there you go.
Extension.
Yeah, okay. And that's probably stuff from an extension. Click around a couple of the links, or just go click one in the footer.
All right. So all clear, disable cache, preserve log, recording. Cool. And let's, I do need to fix our CSS a little bit. Wow, we look at all those chunks.
Cool. So you click the about link. So if you go to the very top, you'll see the first request there is a new document request for /about.
Sure.
Yeah. So the way the phillyjs site works today is it's a multi-page app. There is no client-side routing going on whatsoever. I don't even know if there's actually any real interactivity such that like React needs to be hydrated on this site. As far as like, there's no like drop downs or like anything like that I know of.
Yeah, no.
There might be one like expand collapse thing on one of the pages, but for the most part, like, it's a pretty simple multi-page site. And if you open up the component with those links, which I think is called page grid.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yep. Go down to the links there. See those nav links? They each have that reload document prop.
Right. Yeah.
So that's telling Remix, React Router Remix in this case, go get a whole new document. Don't do a soft navigation in the client for these links. I want you to like, this is just an ahref. When you click it, I want you to let the browser make a full document request. So if you take that off on this site real quick and like let it reload and click around a little bit, what you should start to see is that this just becomes a spa. It becomes a client-side navigated app going page to page.
No more docs. Look at that. Shout out to our sponsors. Thank you. This is so cool.
Oh, okay, you got doc. So yeah. So now go back to unfilter from doc. Go to like all, and what you should see is that there should be some. See those .data requests.
.data.
You see that like about .data.
Ooh.
So that's. Yeah. Well, you're not going to be able to make too much sense of this. This is using like a library called TurboStream, written by Jacob Eby on our team. But this is essentially like a streaming data format that can like stream down promises as they resolve. Very, very slick library.
It is slick. By the way, I'm sorry, we have a question from the chat that Matt, I think you might be a little better equipped technically and organizationally. Can you rank the entire Remix team, please?
Depends what you're ranking on. If you're ranking on, you said memes before. If you're ranking on memes, I think you got to put Mark at the top.
Mark on top. Okay.
Mark and maybe Ryan. Mark and Ryan probably lead the meme game.
Meme game strong. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. If you're ranking on community organizers like we talked about, you got to put Brooks up there.
Got it. Brooks, I hope that's what you were looking for. Great question. Awesome. Okay, cool. So this, by the way, this format, that's actually, I mean, I can't do more than just guess or infer what these are, but that's really cool. Like it's a JSON with just, it's streamable and okay. I don't know what these numbers are, but nice like I can see the data.
Once it pretty prints that way. Yeah. What all the numbers there are, they're two things, not to like go too deep into the weeds, but it is actually like pretty slick. The numbers are references to indices in that overall array. And so when you see something like 1, 2 in that very first, on line 2, you see like a key of 1 with a value of 2. That means in this object, the key name is index 1 in this array, which is the word root right below it. That's index 1 in the array. And the value is index 2 in this array, which is another one of those objects. So it's 3, -5. So the key in that object is index 3, which is data. And then -5, I believe all the negatives are pointers to like static values, so null and undefined, things like that. There's just like references to the library knows when it deserializes this, like, oh, at -5, that's a constant for a null, and I'll stick a null in there or something. But cool. So yeah, you can sort of see the data when you expand it out. Yeah,
look at that. So like just confirming understanding here, data key value routes about because 4, 5.
0, 1, 2, 3. You're off by 1 there. Favorite kind of computer science error. So index 4 in that array is actually going to be line 6, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the second key in that object. And then 5 is an object. And then it's the 3, 6. So then you'd have to like cross-reference index 3 and index 6 as well.
Okay. This is getting, it's theoretically or ideologically simple, but in order for me to follow this, it's getting beyond what I would be willing to do on stream.
Yeah. But so these data requests are sort of the key to us unlocking true SSG for Remix apps. Because there's a couple ways to think about SSG. It's been like overloaded way too many times. Some folks, if you think about like pure static site generation, like it's just you're statically generating a multi-page app. I have 10 HTML documents and they just link to one another and that's it. There may be 0 client-side JavaScript. Then there's this form of SSG that's been more popular lately, which is I have a bunch of static HTML documents, but they then hydrate into a client-side navigable application. So I can land on, if you have those 10 HTML docs, I can land on any one of those as my initial URL. But then as I click links, I'm just making fetches client-side via to some third-party API and navigating via React or React Router or something like that. So in a Remix world, prior to this single fetch, we made our requests for data to the route, and we used query params to say, like, which route do I want data for? Do I want data for the root route or the index route or the about route? And because they were done via query params, there was no way to like statically pre-generate the data for a given route, because you can't deploy a query param thing to a static file server, right? You can't have like a file and say, hey, if this query param is here, serve this version of the file, without, some of the hosting providers will let you do some interesting things there, but you can't just like stick an HTML file out there.
Yeah.
So by switching over to these .data files that are now just a text-based streaming format, we can now say, oh, like I'm going to actually pre-generate not only the HTML about.html, I'm going to pre-generate this about.data file so that I can stick that .data file on a static host. And now when I client-side navigate from one page to another, and it asks for the data, the static host is able to respond with that.
Cool.
So that was kind of the key, that what Remix couldn't do prior to this single fetch was statically generate a site that was able to hydrate into a client-side navigable app because we couldn't fetch those server-side loader data files on a static host.
That's so cool. Thank you. That's a really good explanation.
One thing you can do, can I show you one other little trick actually? That applies to the Philly site. So go into, let's open up the about file. Let's look at the loader in there.
Return team from data team.json, which I'll just open.
Perfect. Okay. So let's comment out the loader. So what that says is loaders in Remix, loaders always run on the server. So when you hit a page, it's going to first run the loaders for the matched routes, get all the data, then it's going to render the component. So if you see on line 17 there, that use loader data hook, that is basically says like, hey, go get me the data that was returned from my loader. And then as you navigate around page to page, we go back to your server and we run those loaders again. So the loader is where you can do stuff like read environment variables and talk to your database, like stuff that only ever runs on the server. That code is never shipped to the client. It's not running on the client. You can safely put access secrets and databases and all that stuff in your loader. You can also do a client loader. So the Remix has a way to say, hey, I want a way to load data for this route, but I want it to run in the client, right? I either want to talk to maybe I want to read from local storage or read from document.cookie or call, some other third-party API directly from the browser. And because our data in this case is not server specific in any way, right? Like we're going all the way to the server to run a loader, but then that loader is just reading a static JSON file, right?
Yeah.
We can safely ship that JSON file to the browser, right? Like there's no secret information in there. So if you do export function client loader underneath that, and then in there, I would do like, so that will probably work. But what I think that's going to do is that's going to end up dumping that whole JSON bundle in your like route bundle. So let's use a dynamic import there instead so that it chunks it off into its own thing. So yeah, return await import and then like // data. Let's see if I think this is going to work. I'm have to see if these dynamic imports import JSON files just fine. And then comment out the import on line 6.
Saved.
And let's go back to the home page and try to click through to about again.
Oh no.
Okay, so I think we might need like a .default at the end of that thing. I'm not quite sure what a dynamic import of a .json file is going to give you there.
Oh, that's right. It's the default thingy. Yeah.
And then I think you're going to need to like wrap. Cool. Okay. So, yep. So go reload the home page and click about. And then let's check out the network.
Page.
Yep.
We got network tab. Okay. Clicking about. Voila. No .data.
Cool. Yep. So we called the client we called the client loader, right? And therefore we didn't actually go make a trip to the server to get that data thing. And in there it pulled the JSON file. And I'm not quite sure where it chunked it off to.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and refresh everything.
So, yeah, I was kind of expecting to see the JSON file as a separate request there.
Cool. So there's no, this is an interesting perf thing. There's no .json file in any open tool from the homepage. Now, when I click about, team.json * import does show up in the like expanded dev tools. And under
check the network tab. Does it show up there?
I filtered. Team.json imports. Yes.
There it is. Okay.
Cool.
Yep. Cool. So what happens there is, we route to the about page. Remix / React Router are like, oh, okay, this page has a client loader. I'm going to run that instead of, by default, it'll go to the server and run the server loader. But if you give it a client loader, you have the ability to effectively like intercept that request and say like, you know what, don't go to the server. I want to do something else. Or you actually have a way, there's a parameter to that lets you call the server loader yourself. So you can take it and you can like add more data. You can say, all right, well, here's the data from the server, but then maybe your user stores like a sort preference in local storage. So you could, all right, I'm gonna get the server from the data, I'm gonna apply the user specific sort preference and then return it. But in this case, like this would be a perfectly valid way to set up the phillyjs website so that we could SSG it and still have client side navigation, because we're basically saying our data is already sitting there in a JSON file. We can access that in a soft navigation from the client.
Sure.
Right. But cool. That's not what we want to show. We want to show like, I want to run server loader. So maybe I do want to talk to my database and get my data from there. Not every application is blessed with the ability to store their data in a nice clean JSON file.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I wanted to just touch on that because that client loader stuff is also really powerful as a way to say like, if you don't want to run a runtime server, like that's great. Here's another tool in your tool belt. So we try to be really flexible with the ways you can like decide your own architecture. Like we're not necessarily trying to say like you have to use this architecture. Like that's up to you, your application, your team. Remix wants to be really flexible as far as here are the patterns for loading data. But if you want to load it on the server, you want to load it on the client, you want to statically generate it, like we want you to be able to do any of those types of architectures with the same tool and the same patterns.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's incredible the scope that meta frameworks like Remix have to tackle. You're as you're saying, you need to be a right or a great choice for static sites, dynamic sites on mobile, dynamic sites, ... like all these different things. It's not your place, so to speak, to say you must do it this one way. You know.
Yeah. There's no one solution for the whole like spectrum of web applications out there, right? You have everything from very static to highly dynamic to real time. Like we would like Remix to cover as much of that as possible.
Cool. Awesome. So we explored client loaders and saw the network request characteristics of them. What's next?
All right. So if we want to use pre-rendering, we have to first get to React Router v7. So we're going to have to do some housekeeping. So the first thing I would do is let's go.
Actually, sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I'm not. I don't know if anyone here is a fan of the old show Monk. I'm not going to be able to continue until I fix the typo that I'm just now noticing on stream that has been there for 15 months. Dear God. Sorry. Let me just
no, trust me, I would do the same thing. Problem is, I actually don't notice typos. I'm very glad that Brooks is on the team because Brooks catches my typos in docs and blog posts.
Oh, thank God for Brooks. Also, Nikki T, hey, how's it going? Oh geez, I just remembered I should be I don't stream enough to remember how to do it. I'm gonna shout out Todd Libby, another streamer, and then I'm gonna shout out Nikki T online as soon as it lets me, which I think will be a few minutes. Sorry. Okay. You were saying what's next? We're going on to the next version.
Yep. So we need to get off of Remix v2 and onto React Router v7. So let's do this the command line way. I don't know what type of developer you are. Some folks just like edit package JSON inline and then just like install. And some folks do it all via like npm install, npm uninstall. Like, which one are you, out of curiosity?
I like that you've noted the difference. I tend to lean towards hand editing package JSON because I like the control. And that's just me, but both are valid, I think.
I think I have, this is largely, I think, scars from my prior life, but like I've done this for a while. I've been doing web dev now for 15 plus years professionally. And if you used to edit package JSON directly, it would just like node modules would get all out of whack. Like the tools were not good enough to realize what you changed. So like 10 years ago, I decided I would like never, ever edit package JSON by hand. I'm pretty sure that every one of the tools now, NPM, PNPM, Yarn, are all smart enough now, but I have these like old habits of like, no, you have to first NPM uninstall the thing. So we're going to do that. We are going to PNPM uninstall all of the Remix packages. So it is at remix run /node, at remix run /react, remix run dev and serve. We're going to keep the ESLint one just because we've not ported that over to React Router. We are not planning to. So like we're trying to get out of the game of we manage an ESLint config for you. Like that, again, that's not a decision for us to make for your team. So we're going to keep the version 2 of that so our linting doesn't break.
By the way, that's a whole other topic to talk about.
Yes,
that if we have time at any point, I'd love to. That's not for this stream.
Okay, so Remix V2 stuff is gone. Now we need to install the new React Router stuff. So pnpm install react-router at nightly. No @sign on this one. This is the actual React Router package itself, and the nightly is the tag. Yep. And then what else? At React Router /node at nightly.
React Router /node at nightly.
Yep. So that's good. Those are the 2 production dependencies. So give that a run. So that's what I said. We've React Router and React Router DOM will remain the current ones. And then these new scoped packages are what's coming over from Remix to React Router v7. And then the 2 dev ones.
For the versioning story.
What is that? Sorry?
Oh, no, I was just amused that PNPM is telling me, hey, there's a newer version available of React Router.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh, it must think the nightlies are behind like the latest. And then the dev ones are, so pnpm install -D React Router at React Router /dev at nightly, and at React Router /serve at nightly.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So the deps are updated. Now the next thing we got to do is just change the imports. So we can do this in VS Code with just a global find replace.
Love a find and replace. Oh, yes.
So I would just do a global find replace for like from we're changing the import. So from space at remix run /react, and change that to from React Router, React-router. No @sign.
Wow.
And this is where we plan to have code mods that'll do these next couple of steps that are kind of tedious. We're planning to have code mods available to do this for folks going from either Remix V2 to React Router V7. And potentially, I don't think there's going to be as much if you're going from like React Router V6 to V7. That should be a much simpler upgrade. Okay, and then let's go over to the Vite config.
Code mods are nice.
And in here, that package up there is going to be React Router /dev. And then just for naming, let's change it like Vite plugin as Remix. Let's change that to like Vite plugin as React Router. Okay. And then you can delete that future single fetch, because the way our future flags work is a future flag introduces the default behavior in the next major release. So you were able to opt into the V7 future flags, V7 single fetch behavior in V2 with that flag. Now we just take it away because single fetch is the default in V7.
I love that, by the way. That's such a smart, convenient way of doing things for the future.
I think, I mean, again, I've done this for a while. I have lived through Angular 1 to 2. I lived through Python 2 to 3. I lived through Vue 2 to Vue 3. I lived through like Happy JS V8 to whatever after that. Like I've suffered this major version thing so many times that like this was like a really like close to my heart thing. Like we need to make sure that people can upgrade their Remix apps in a much easier fashion than we've done a lot of times before.
Love it. +1.
Okay, so we did the plugin name. We get rid of future. Let's go over to package JSON again. We have some scripts to change. So in the scripts section, we have like Remix Vite dev and Remix Vite build. Those will just become React Router build and React Router dev. No more Vite prefix. Because again, Vite is now the default. You used to sort of opt into Vite. It'll just be the default. And then I think at the bottom here, there's a node 14. Not that this really matters, but technically, I think I would change that to 20. 18 is probably going to be the minimum because it's still LTS for us, but using 20 is really what we're going to be recommending because you can use the native fetch then once you're on 20.
Oh my God, is fetch that recent? I got in my mind that Node has had fetch forever now.
It has. Node has had fetch, but they didn't. It really wasn't stable enough. Fetch in 18 had some bugs, and I think we really found that like once you got to Node 20, and I think there was even like a certain minor version of 20 where it stabilized enough that we stopped getting folks complaining that things weren't working right.
Wow, wow, wow. Is it still listed as experimental? Okay, so it's
Not.
stable in 22 and good or like reasonably usable in 20 for you.
Oh,
So
interesting. I think in my head I thought it was stable in 20. Hmm. Maybe that's why we haven't fully bought in until they call it
okay.
stable. But yeah, in 18, I think there were still enough issues that we have. Remix has a polyfill you can use that these days is just using the Undici implementation.
DG, shout out. Hi, Damien.
All right. Last thing I think we got to do is fix some typings. So look
Ooh.
for, let's do a global find replace. Well, let's just look at one real quick. Go to like the about TSX. Let's look at one to see the type of change we're making. So we have not yet brought over these generics to React Router. We're still like Pedro on our team is our TypeScript wizard, and we're figuring out like typing route data and route stuff is very tricky. So we have these generics in Remix today that essentially, prior to single fetch, everything you returned was a response and it was serialized to JSON. So things like if you returned a date and you serialize out the JSON, it gets turned into a string. So we have a whole bunch of these little nasty types inside that generic that are like, oh, like I see that your loader returned a date, but I'm actually going to tell you correctly in the component that it's going to be a string because it got serialized over the wire. With single fetch and that turbo stream library, we are now able to serialize dates correctly, and we deserialize them into date instances on the client. And that works with things like maps and sets and like big ints, I believe. Like there's a whole bunch of new stuff unlocked by this. But we've been trying a couple of different ways to figure out the best way to do the typings for that in an incremental upgrade manner. So that's very much in flux. We've not brought them to React Router. So we are going to cheat and delete that generic entirely. And we're just going to say as awaited return type of loader. Because now that it's single fetch, you are getting like exactly the data. Like even if that JSON structure had a date in it, you're still going to get a date. So we can just say like, hey, the data I'm getting in my component is exactly what my loader function returns because I'm able to serialize that over the wire. So let's do a global find replace for that. So anything use loader data, generic type of loader will become that new one.
Ooh. I never get a chance to use this. I'm gonna do a regular expression.
Cool. Good luck.
Gonna switch from from this. So anything inside the use loader data generic, I'm going to capture group that. So dot plus. So dot is anything, plus is at least once, capturing that with parentheses. I'm going to turn that into use loader data. Oh, I need escape parentheses here. I'm going to turn that into as $1. Shout out VS Code. But it's not type loader, it's awaited return type of whatever it was. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that should do it, I think.
And now if I do a search on all the awaited return types. Yay!
That looks good. Doesn't that feel like regex is one of those things that makes you feel like you're king of the world?
Oh my God, yeah. This is like the most basic. Yeah, when it goes right. Oh man.
Awesome. All right. Try running pnpm lint. Let's see if we are good there, because I know that'll check some of our typing stuff as well.
When you say lint, do you mean type checking? Because I actually have that under
no. Okay, but yeah, either. I know lint. Lint used to complain about like some of the generics because it's got the TypeScript plugins as well. Where is that? Okay, TS. We have some stuff in TS config. Yeah, let's go yank that out. I forgot that one. Like I said, part of us figuring out how to do these incremental type upgrades, we had a single fetch override file there, which can go away.
Nice.
Is it still? Yeah, just delete that. Perfect.
Cool. And to your point, TypeScript is happy, so you gave me good advice. Thanks. No lint complaints. Although I do need to update my lint config here because this is now doable in the config. But anyway.
Oh, okay. All right, and that worked. All right, let's PNPM dev. Let's see if it works.
This is so exciting. Oh, never mind.
Oh, is this the Wrangler thing? I ran into this yesterday too. Scroll up a little bit. Is that complaining about Wrangler? Yeah, just this is a bug on our end. Do a PNPM install -d Wrangler. We've got we just brought over the Cloudflare packages, and there's a dependency that's misset up in our dev package, because you should not need Wrangler if you're not deploying to Cloudflare.
That makes sense. Cool. PM dev.
Yeah, so we're not going to use Wrangler, but that'll let our dev package load. And then cool. Let's open that.
Wow. Look at that.
Awesome.
We did it.
Is that in dark mode?
Yes.
Isn't that normally it used to be a yellow background with black.
Yes.
Font?
I've been if I get Mark on here, we'll talk about styling systems and the complaints of theming. There's no way to change it right now, but if you have prefers color scheme light versus dark, it's different.
Gotcha. Okay. Did you switch that in your since we were just running V2? I think as we're calling it, it's like we didn't change anything that would tell it to use dark mode, did we?
No, I think that's just in the styles. How did we do this? How did we do this? I think there's a swap somewhere for color background.
Okay.
Yeah. Media prefers dark. We swap color background.
There you go. Cool. Awesome. So you are running React Router v7 nightly, not even alpha. That's nightly. So that's I'm glad that goes as smooth as it does. But that's the goal, right? We've promised people like, hey, if you have a Remix v2 app and you've adopted all of the future flags, so you saw we had that single fetch adopted. There were some breaking code changes to do in Remix v2 for that. But if you adopt those future flags one by one as they come along, when you are ready to go to React Router v7 and when we release it, hopefully it's a couple of code mods to make those changes we just made.
Wow. Yeah.
So
no, that's really nice.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Like basically every breaking change we want to introduce gets shipped in the prior major version behind a flag. So that major version actually has both code paths, and you're either on the old one or the new breaking one. You adopt those changes, and then when we release v7, mostly we're just deleting the old code paths. So our major versions are kind of boring in a way. It's not like, hey, here's Remix v7. It's got like 19 new big features. It's like, hey, here's Remix, the next major version. It's just got all the stuff you had with future flags before. But as soon as we do that, we can then start shipping future flags for like the next set of breaking changes.
Cool. Yeah, it must be very exciting for you though on the team, because you get to delete all that code every
yeah. Oh, we do like, yeah, you ship these PRs that delete like thousands of lines of code, and it feels awesome.
Love it.
All right, cool. Should we pre-render?
Yeah, let's do it.
The thing we're here for. Okay, 48 minutes. Let's go into the Vite config. And what we're going to do here is in that React Router plugin config, we're going to add a pre-render key. So there's two things. You can either this is basically, you're going to tell Remix the Vite plugin or the React Router Vite plugin, here are the paths I want you to pre-render. And what we're going to do at build times, we're going to actually build your full server build as if this were a running server application. And a Remix server is really just a handler. So you hand it a fetch request and you get back a fetch response, which is generally rendered HTML. So what we do during the build is we create that server handler. We create fetch requests for whatever paths you give us right here. And we just fire it at the handler in memory right there. So we never really boot up a server. We just have the handler that your running server would otherwise hand off to. And we just hit it with requests for whatever paths you tell us. So let's just start with like / and /about.
So cool.
And then dev actually doesn't really do anything here. So like when you're running in dev, you are running a dev server. Like your dev experience is not, let me pre-generate an HTML file and go load it and see what's wrong, go back, make a change, pre-generate again and load it. Like we still want that really good feedback loop of dev. So we are running a dev server. So you're going to have to kill the dev process, and pre-rendering just happens at build time. So run pm build instead. And hopefully what we see at the bottom here
Ad text is complaining.
What's complaining?
A little yellow there, but otherwise, yeah, I see build client, index, and about, including those .data files we were looking
at. So
at.
so we pre-rendered the data files needed for those routes, as well as the HTML. So we've got an index HTML and an about/index, which just allows like a normal web server to serve that at /about. And then we also pre-rendered the data files, which has that TurboStream array format we looked at, so that we can route between these pages. So if you just run like npx http-server here, we'll just run like a simple server, and then build/client. Yep. You should be able to pull up, I think it'll come on 8081 is their default. No, 8080. Okay.
Whoop. Sweet.
Cool. And then
so that works. Index works. And then code
and I
will be a
think if you check the network tab, that should be a soft nav between about and the index page too.
Oh my God, I really need to fix these styles. I'm focusing on the wrong thing here. Okay. So preserve log, no filters, looking at docs. About is a 302 to about without the slash.
Oh, okay. Did you we probably added the reload documents back in. Did we like reset to a fresh Git status?
Wow, I am honestly impressed with your speed of recollection there. Yes, that's exactly what I did.
As I said, I do this stuff all day, every day. This is why it's good. This is why it's better that you're streaming and I'm not streaming.
You would have fixed this thing. We've had about 40 or so minutes of explanation and about 12 minutes of activity, and that 12 minutes would have been like 2 if it was. Okay. So, yeah. Oh.
When we get there, 400 bad request. Let's see.
Interesting. Is there like a... Oh, I don't know if this is... if I should have to fix this, but there are no trailing slashes in my routes on page grid.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, let's go ahead and add those. I think that might be a HTTP server option. It's also something that, like, quite honestly, we should probably generate both. Let me see these options again. Interesting. Print this line, path to automatically.
And I'm 100% convinced this is an HTTP server, like the little CLI we're using issue, because on a real site, like a real deployer, you would get automatic.
Yeah, I thought there was a flag. I'm looking at their docs right now. I thought they had a flag that would sort of automatically redirect to that, but I'm not seeing it. Show directory listings. When enabled, they will serve.
There are also like 15 different serve packages. I was looking at the serve one from Cell recently too, directory, but I feel like this is
not what we're
looking for.
Go to the remix docs. I think we recommend a different one. Go to docs on top right and go to guides. There's a spa mode guide on the bottom left. We can talk about spa mode in a sec too, but look for SIRV on here.
SIRV.
Yeah, there's a package. Yeah, try that. Okay. I think that serve CLI might be a little bit better for this.
Okay. Ooh, oh yeah, I love a good CLI, like this little interface here. Snazzy one. Okay.
Let's go try that and see if that does the trailing slash for us.
It appears to be.
So we didn't pre-render code of conduct though, right? Remember?
Oh my God!
Try clicking the about link.
I was really enjoying that. Sorry for not giving an epilepsy warning. That's so interesting. It gives So this is with me adding this slash in there. If I remove this slash.
But then you just refreshed and that worked?
Yes.
So that tells me maybe it's actually a problem with the data request.
Click on about 400 bad request. I'm just going to open a new tab.
Yep.
Hey.
And that works. There it is. Okay. Small lag there. Okay. So let's look at the network tab. It sounds like something's going on with the data request, not the actual like SSG part.
I'm just going to go ahead and where's the shortcut to pause everything? Dear God, how do I stop this? This is awful. Someone help me. I can't pause.
Oh, you got the React hydration loop. Okay. You can just kill the tab and open a new one.
Is there lag happening with us?
A little bit for me, yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right, so I've got the network tab open. It's giving me 200. It's giving canceled for the.
Yeah, no, I think you're in like a React hydration loop here. So I would close this tab.
Okay.
Just kill it and start a brand new one.
Okay. I don't know what that term means. What is a React hydration loop?
React has this, I think, is fixed in 19, but for a very long time, React was mostly just hydrating like a div on the page. And if you have an error with hydration where the div contents that you rendered on the server don't match the div contents that the client renders, it would throw a hydration error and it would bubble up to an error boundary or something, but it would only mess up like that div. And in the process of like showing you the error, React does stuff where like they remove the child nodes from the div and add a new child node and do all that DOM stuff. Remix and most of the meta frameworks now are not hydrating just a div. They're hydrating the actual like HTML document tag at the very top, because then they can manage the head section for you, meta tags, the title, all of that kind of stuff. And React has issues where if you have a hydration error that happens at that HTML tag level, it at one point, and I've never been able to fully track this down, it's on my list, at some point in their handling of these errors, they try to add a sibling node to like document element, and you can't do that. So the DOM throws an error. They try to like render the new UI as a sibling and then remove the old UI or something. And the document throws an error. And it's like, hey, document can only have one child. Like it's only possible to have one HTML element. And it just gets into this loop where it like tries to render the error. It throws an error. It tries to render that error, which the DOM throws an error. And you just get into this little loop that never stops. So I think it is, I'm not 100% sure it's not a remix issue, but it's this, edge case that I'm still trying to reproduce in a pure React hydrating the HTML DOM element thing.
Okay. Cool. So, in that case, thank you. That's really interesting, actually. Who would have thought errors are hard? So if I've got the
we should. Yeah, we generated an about.data. We generated the about.html. And yeah, bad request. So where's the 400? We're not filtered to anything there? Disable cache. All right, well, let's do this. Maybe this is probably just an issue with the data files. So let's go put the reload document back on. Let's go back to where we were. At the very least, our multi-page app stuff should work. We may still have some things to work out for that sort of like SSGing into a spa. And let's go into the Vite config and let's add the other couple of routes so that we have everything generated, not just those two. So what are they? It's like about banner. It's gonna be all the file names in that routes folder.
Can I do something clever here? Oh wait, FS.
In theory, but it's not always going to work based on like the way Remix's file names translate to paths. In this specific setup, they might all just be single top level file names.
cool, but this is not like a scalable thing. I shouldn't have brought
No, it
this.
wouldn't be. I would like to do is like right now you have to just manually specify them, or that can be a function. Like you can pre-render can just be a function that returns an array, and that would let you do what you're thinking of there.
Mhm.
But remix, I think we should have just a flag where you can say like pre-render true. And like we're smart
That's
enough to know your static routes. We can't fill in dynamic portions. So if you had like /product/slug, we don't know what those slug values are. So we can't possibly pre-generate those. You have to tell us what those are. But we can, in this case, all of these routes are just static URL segments. We can figure that out. So yeah, I'd like to add a Boolean option to this so that we can just figure out the static ones, or in the function version of this, we can hand you like, here's all your static paths, spread them into an array with your dynamic paths and hand them all back to us.
I'd love that, honestly. That's actually something I was planning on trying to bring up if we
Yeah.
had time. That you have the data, and in fact,
Mhm.
something other frameworks, I think at least Next and Astro maybe do, is like on a thing with like whatever the slug in the name, like they'll give you the option to export some function from the file saying what the static generated paths
Yeah.
or generate
Yeah.
temporal
Yeah.
paths are.
Yeah. We've very briefly thought about like what that API might look like. And yeah, like I'm sure at some point, I'm sure we'll come up with something to add there. But the other option you could do that we could consider is just implement like a spidering thing, right? We can implement logic that's like, all right, I'll start with just pre-rendering the slash route, and then I'll discover all of the ahrefs on there, and I'll go try to crawl those as well, and just spider it out that way.
Yeah. What should I do with this ICS feed, by the way?
So that's the one I think we talked about this before we started the stream, but
Yeah.
that's something we're gonna have to fix. We don't handle those type of like resource routes correctly yet. So I would skip that for now. That
Also
is a
broken on
bug,
prod.
because what we do is like it's pretty naive now. We look at that ICS feed, we spin up a handler at build time, we hit it with that path, and we just blindly write the response out as a .html file in that folder. But that resource route is not returning HTML, so we write out a file with an HTML extension that I believe should have the actual .ics data in it, which is obviously incorrect.
I'm realizing, yeah, I'm also realizing it's just broken on prod anyway, that I think I did this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a button, but actually this is doable in HTML now. So if I just, I always forget what the details summary stuff looks
Summary
like.
detail stuff.
Yeah, but roughly this, I'm gonna just pm dev just to get this working under events. Cool.
There you go.
And we don't need the state anymore. I think you alluded to this earlier, that this is the only interactive stuff.
Yeah, I think that was the only one I saw in there of like what we actually need to hydrate React for on this site.
Cool. Awesome. And it's fixed.
There you go.
Except it needs to be display, I think, inline block to not be fully wide.
Then you.
Oh, okay. And now we got the same font family. Fixed. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Another distraction. Yeah. What are we doing now? No. Are we
so now we're back to, we have a working multi-page app now, I think, right?
Yes, once the server starts. Yes.
Cool. Let's pull that up and just make sure. You need what, 80/80 on that one, I think. Not 50. That's the there we go.
I have the reload document. It appears to be okay. So we need, when it doesn't have the trailing slash, it does
the loop thing. Okay.
Yeah. If I use the trailing slash, oops.
And we're good. Yeah, just killed the tab there
before my computer inevitably dies from it.
Yeah, that's good old. Chrome's pretty good about that. Eventually just kills it, because I run into those loops debugging stuff all the time. Chrome does eventually just like shut down that tab.
That's good. I'm glad. By the way, should I worry about this random thing on ad text error when
using source map? Yeah, I have no idea where that's coming from. That is going to be something inside of like our Veet plugin, but I
Oh,
do not know quite what would cause that on that specific file versus any other ones.
I'm now remembering what this page is. There's an ad, and we use the query parameters. What you were saying before, month equals January, and year equals 2024, and it doesn't get deployed. But like locally, in theory, you could do like a. It's like that we put it on the monitor at the beginning of meetups.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes. So not important.
Gotcha. So yeah, that's interesting. That one, and that's all done client side, like the looking at what the query param is.
Yeah, it's our only used client in the whole repo.
Okay. You don't need to use client. That's not doing anything. We don't support, like, that's an RSC thing. You shouldn't need that. We deploy to static pages. Yeah.
Great.
I don't think that's the cause of the error, but yeah, there's no need to be putting use client in a that would be a next thing today, and soon to be a React Router, probably 7.1 thing when we ship RSC support.
Okay. Well, I got rid of it, and the yellow warning about add text went away.
That's funny. Okay, so that was actually the cause of the source map thing.
Cool.
Okay, so our trailing slashes. Cool. All right, so we have a trailing slash issue that we will have to fix, and I actually think I know why that's getting thrown. We do some URL comparisons right now to see if, because we don't support like URL rewriting or anything. React Router on the client needs to be able to hydrate with the same URL that the server rendered for, so we make sure we get the same route matches. We do some URL comparisons, and I think that trailing slash is probably triggering that, and we should be moving that to not looking at the URL specific, but the matches, the routes that matched on the server and the routes that matched on the client, so that a single slash doesn't throw off the comparison.
Cool. Awesome.
So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure why the data stuff wasn't working. That's interesting to me. Like, reload documents shouldn't be needed because we did generate those data files and they should be able to get loaded. So do you want to try that one more time? Let's just see if we get, maybe we were in a weird spot before with those like slash URLs.
Yeah. All right.
What's that one? What's back indirection arrow? Back indication arrow.
Oh, the ARIA label on the arrow. We wanted a little more semantic content or semantic context for what this arrow is.
Okay, but that's not one of the links to the pages, right? That's
no. That's just the
the home page link. Okay.
Yeah. So like on a page, it's this little friend. Okay. It's just the ARIA label.
Interesting. Okay, so we're still getting a 400. That might be another bug we got to look at. Because
I was a service that makes me happy.
Should work. But yeah, for the way we deploy this now with all those reload documents, I think we're all set.
Woo.
Yep, build client. It's funny because when we see that 400, we don't see it in the network tab. So something is going on in the client side routing there. We're throwing a 400 attempting to get there. It's not actually like we go over the server and that web server gives us a 400.
Yeah, I am just kind of curious. Come on, web browser. Where that comes from. 400 bad requests, and that's font, very basic.
Yeah, so what that's going to be the like the root level remix error boundary. So you can put error boundaries at every route hierarchy level in a remix app or React Router for the same thing. So our router is throwing a 400 and it's bubbling up to our default error boundary because we don't have one specified in the app itself.
Cool.
So you could put like in your root route, you could put an error boundary component there and you could render like a much prettier version of your error UI.
I'm actually going to put that in. Can I put that in the page grid component? So it's on both?
Not You could with like a flag, but you need something at the top because page grid is being rendered by the component. Uh, where are we here? What file? Index. I would do this in root. Why don't you go up to the root one?
Oh, right. There's a root. Honestly, I forgot root is an actual thing and not the general term. Okay.
Yeah. So copy and paste that whole. So the default export of a route is essentially like, what's my happy path UI look like? Copy and paste that whole thing and do export function error boundary. And then get rid of the default. You only have the one default export. And then in there, do like right before the JSX, you can do like let error equals. There's a hook called use route error. Yep. And then
I like
what
that
I
it's
would
invalid
do.
type.
Yeah. So there's a couple, this can be a couple things. But yeah, if you want to just like log instead of the outlet on line 65, you can just do like an H1, like, oh no, like whatever you want your UX to be here. And then you can put in the error. So the error there, you're gonna have to do some like type narrowing. It's either going to be a thing we call like a route error response, which would be the 400. So if we ignore, I wouldn't even do that. That's because it's not. There's a function. Yeah, is route error response is really what you want there. And then that once we type narrow, that'll have a status and a status text and a data for the string. So you can do like status and then like plus. Yep. And then maybe, and then, yeah. And like, there's also an error.data you can throw in there. That'll be like that might actually tell us what the router thinks is going wrong here.
Let's debug.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Ooh, we have an interesting question from the chat. Shout out learner. How does server-side routing work?
It's basically all the server gets on an HTTP request is a request with a URL. So server-side routing is I'm going to take the route tree that you define from your files on disk in a Remix app, and I'm going to attempt to match them to the URL that came in and render all of your React components on the server. So rather than a normal single page app would send up like generally an HTML page with an empty div, and we would look at window.location, match your routes, and then render everything client side. We just do that route matching and rendering on the server, and we send back a full HTML page for those routes.
Cool. Hey.
There we go. What do we got? Okay. Unable to match URL about. Okay, interesting. This is definitely alpha territory. That's part of the new Fog of War stuff we shipped. Literally
Fog
like
of War
a week or two ago. Yeah, that's a whole nother stream. But
what the hell is
so what's happening here is our client side router is unable to match that about route, which is interesting because it's probably honestly the trailing slash causing this. So yeah, we'll have to look into why that would not route, but that would explain why it's not actually going over the network. It is our client side router. It's like, hey, I don't know what to do with this one.
Thank you, Brooks, in the chat.
Oh, you know what? No, I know what it is. Hang on. It's the manifest. Yep.
That would explain the network requests about manifest failing.
Yeah. Okay, we can fix this. Let's hack this together real quick. Go to do you want to let me give you the 10-second overview of Fog of War. So Remix today, so you've got, if you look at your routes folder for this app, you've got like 6 routes for this, right? So a pretty small app. So Remix today takes effectively the metadata about those routes and it sends them up in what we call a manifest. And it says, okay, so the client side knows I've got 7 routes in this application. So when you try to route to like the /about page in the client router, we can be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know how to go fetch the .data file for that. That's a matching route. I know how to go get the component for that, all of that. That's completely fine to send all of those routes up to a Remix app today in an app like this, because it's only 7 routes. We're not sending all of the components. It really is just like, what's the URL segment that matches? Where is the JS file for whenever you need it? It's just like a little bit of metadata. When you get to an application that has hundreds or thousands of routes, it gets to be a bit of a performance hit to send like 1,000 of those routes up, because we build a route tree that contains all 1,000 of those routes, just the metadata. But that metadata can get prohibitively large at scale. So Fog of War is an optimization we shipped recently that only sends up the routes for the page that you're on. And then the term Fog of War comes from like the video game, like Warcraft, where you like navigate around and like the clouds dissipate. So we essentially discover the route tree as you navigate around and slowly grow it over time, rather than shipping the entire thing up initially.
Yeah.
So this has a small issue with pre-rendering. So this feature just shipped in Remix v2. It does not support pre-rendering because that's a React Router v7 thing. So we've not yet like made sure that those play nicely together. So you see that underscore manifest request is failing because there is no running server to satisfy that and tell us like, hey, they're about to go to this new part of the route tree. Tell me about those routes, right? How do I expand my map? So we're going to make a static file that has all of the routes that the client router needs.
Ooh.
So in your build folder, I think it'll be in build client, maybe assets. There should be like a manifest.js file.
Build client assets. Manifest.
Look for manifest. Yep. Let's open that manifest.js. And this is like a JS script that a normal Remix app would load that sticks this onto Remix manifest on window. So if you copy paste that whole thing and dump it in your console, we're going to attempt to then copy the routes out of here using DevTools and save them off into a manifest file. So now look at window.__remix manifest.
So I'll copy and paste it, window__remix manifest. You got a lot of window things here for dev. Okay.
Remix manifest.routes is what we want. Beautiful. So use Chrome's copy here. So just copy paren in DevTools. You can copy the result of any command.
What?
New trick you didn't know? Yeah. Copy. What? So whatever string you pass to copy will go to your clipboard. And then we want to JSON stringify remix manifest.routes.
Oh, so it's just routes. Oh my God. Thank you.
You're going to have to JSON stringify that. You can't copy like an object in memory. Oops.
I think you can, unless that was previously copied.
Yeah, I think that's your previous one is going to have the window remix manifest assignment still.
Oh, no. Looks like they added this.
Oh, that's cool. So they now automatically stringify. Awesome.
Good for them.
Okay.
Is this new?
Copy is not new, but the automatic stringification is new to me. And I've been using copy for a long time.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
So copy paste. Well, you have that copied. So let's go create in our in build client, create a file called ___ manifest. Mm-hmm. No extension. So this is normally like an actual live API endpoint in the Remix server. And this, we have to now just wrap that object in one more thing. It's a slightly different data structure. So add a new like object around that. And that whole thing is going to go in a key named patches. Basically patches to the route tree. And then give it one more key called camel case not found paths as a sibling to patches. And just give it an empty array.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So look at it. Prettier is failing on this file, and it was failing on it before.
That's weird. It should be
forced. Okay, it was just because it's ignored. Okay.
Okay.
Sweet.
All right. Now what's going to happen is when we first load the homepage. So this is what was going wrong before. We're loading the homepage, and the only routes that are getting sent to the client are the root route and the _index route, because that's where we're starting. then it's saying like, oh, look, I found a link on this page to /about. Let me call the manifest endpoint and determine if it knows about /about. And if it does, I'm going to get a patch and I'm going to stick that in my client route tree and sort of grow it to include any new links.
Mm-hmm.
So now
that makes sense. So there was a flash there for just a brief second, and then we get an OS. Unable to decode TurboStream response.
About / yeah. So now this is the trailing. So see that request is including the trailing /, which we don't want. So that's again probably just like a little edge case we've got to fix on our end.
Okay.
So fog of war and pre-rendering have to have some stuff synced up between the two of them.
Cool. Alpha stuff. I was always an Age of Empires kid, so that's why I know this.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's we actually went digging because we were talking about, that's always the name we've used internally because it really is like it maps to exactly what our router is doing. But each one of us had like a different video game that we knew that term from. It was like Age of Empires or World of Warcraft. We went and looked. There's like a game in the 70s or something that like first coined that idea. I don't remember what it was called though.
Cool. Wow, I've learned a lot in this stream. I was expecting to learn, but it's been a lot, and this is very, very exciting. And I feel bad that copy is probably the problem.
Routing is very, especially like you get into these like client-side navigated apps and routing and, doing all of the, keeping your data loading on the server and not overloading the app with too much JavaScript up front. Yeah. It's tricky.
Now I'm like,
yeah,
can I find the place in your scripts? But I don't think I'm going to do that in the next 8 minutes. Cool.
We could try.
I'm going to have to go before we're likely to make progress. But you know what? I trust you, Matt. I trust you to fix this.
No, yeah, the trailing slashes then just have to be normalized there for data requests in a pre-rendering world. Cool. But yeah, what we'll need to do is that our pre-render will, now that fog of war is a thing, our pre-rendering will also write out that __ manifest file so it's there. And then we'll have to figure out how to handle those trailing slashes. Like once we stop comparing the URL based on that and start looking at matches, the trailing slash problem can go away. And we'll also have to figure out what the right recommendation is for a server like that. Like I thought that serve CLI did normalize those for us. And I know I've found like an option for one of those tools in the past. I just don't know what the option was to say like /about and /about/ are the same thing. But I will find that.
Cool.
And
let me
ask
you something.
Tweet it back to your tweet on the stream.
Awesome. Thank you. You mentioned like if someone is server side generating, 50,000 routes or some large number, I forget.
Yep.
The manifest being the dynamic thing is very helpful because you don't need 50,000 entries in your JSON. How would that work if possible with this kind of pre-rendering?
That's tricky, right? So there's a couple ways to do it. If you want to pre-render and use the reload document key like the phillyjs site does today, if you just want a multi-page app, there is no manifest, right? Like the manifest is only a thing that is informing the client side router what routes we know about, right? If you have a multi-page app, your server handles all that. There's no concern about how big is my route tree because it all lives on the server and we're not shipping it up over the wire. So in a pre-generated or a pre-rendered app that wants to do client-side routing, the question is going to be, is loading that full manifest still prohibitive, right? So, and right now it doesn't send them all up, but it does make a call to load that essentially when the page hydrates. It sends up the minimal set of routes initially, and then it looks at the links rendered on the page, which tells it like the user can only go to these next 10 destinations. So with a running server, we call the server and say, hey, just give me the patches for those 10 routes. Those are the only possible places the user can go next. So I only need to expand it that much. If you are statically generating that manifest file, it's going to have all your routes. There's no way for the response to be like different right? You can't use query params to have slash manifest, the file, be different. So that's a good question. I don't quite know if like there's going to be a good, I want to statically pre-render everything, but then I also want to dynamically build out my route tree using this fog of war approach little by little. Like that kind of needs a bit of a running server, because every single request there is dynamic based on the combination of URLs rendered on that page.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I imagine the use case here, the intersection of people who really, really want pre-rendering and
Mm-hmm.
have a giant site and don't want to use reload document, like want to have that spa style.
Yeah.
That's probably a pretty small segment of users.
Yeah. 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 And I think there's like, the question comes down to the kind of like we had to figure out with the data stuff. We had to get to a point where we could say, all right, I know what the data is for this route, and I need to be able to render it out to a static file in a .data file. That's the kind of thing that we'd have to think about. Is there any way for us to think about like the different combinations of
Yeah.
manifest requests we may need to make to grow that route tree in a pre-rendered app?
Yeah. Huh. You can't, right? Like you don't know what the user's stories are. You don't know what's most likely. You
No,
can
we
see
just
all the interlinks between them, but that's it, right?
yeah, but like in theory, what you could do, so just like we did .data, we do .data per URL. So there's whatever URLs your app supports, so slash, slash about, slash banner, all of those. Each one of those gets a .data, so one per path. In
Mhm.
theory, you could also have like a .manifest file per path that has the routes required for that path to render. So I think there is a way. It would be potentially a whole bunch of .manifest files rendered alongside or pre-rendered alongside .data files. So I don't think it's impossible, um, but yeah, it's definitely not something we have really thought about yet,
Okay.
because pre-rendering does not exist in the world that Fog of War lives in right now in V2.
There's a there's a fog of war about manifests, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. That's good though.
Cool.
That's actually like, I'm glad we tripped on that, because now I know V7 is not ready to release these two side by side until we fix that like interplay between them.
Have I inconvenienced the team in that way?
No, no, you've helped. That's what I mean. We love playing it. We love people who play around with the stuff early. Like we do our best to try these things, but we can only replicate so many real world use cases, right? It's actual live apps in the wild that find the little like rough edges that you're like, oh yeah, we didn't think about that.
Yeah. This is tangentially related in practice, but thematically strongly related. Yesterday, I was pairing with someone from the Vue team, Johnson Code HK.
Hmm.
Shout out, great person to pair with. And we found a perf bug in a dependency of ESLint that has existed for like a decade. Like the package is 11 years old, and uh, it took more time. The result was it took more time to print the results from ESLint than it did to generate the ESLint for the
Okay.
results in the first place. And like, there's it was an edge case. It's not like every ESLint run. It's like if you have ESLint with a lot of violations with a plugin that has long names and long ever, like this, like ridiculous, conglomerations of like, you're never gonna find that
Yeah.
accidentally when you're working in a thing.
Yeah.
Someone else will find it accidentally.
But you
It's
said it
impossible
is a
to build
known
these things
bug
privately.
from 7 years ago.
The package was last updated 11 years ago. It's from someone who no
My
longer is
gosh.
active.
Okay. Okay.
And then the package is used. It's text table package. The package
Yep.
is used to print out the stylish, pretty printed ESLint
Okay.
reports, and it
Okay.
has a quadratic regular expression in it that is
Gotcha.
now the equivalent of string.trim end.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Who would have
New
found
tool.
like yeah.
Yeah. I filed a bug on that same thing of like bugs that are very old and like probably won't get fixed. I filed a Firefox specific bug about a year ago, and I like narrowed it down. We got a report of a bug in Remix. It was only happening in Firefox. We reproduced it in a small isolated thing outside of Remix. Went over to Mozilla, filed it there like a year ago. And there was some like chatter in the beginning, and they sort of acknowledged, like, yeah, this doesn't sound quite right. And I don't actually remember specifically what it was. And then like a year went by and I didn't hear anything. And then one day I got an email and it was like, this ticket has been updated. And I go in, and my ticket from 1 year ago got closed as a duplicate of an issue from 13 years ago that is still open. And I was like, well, I don't think we're going to get that one fixed anytime soon.
Nope. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
That's the
Can
world
I
we
ask,
live
do you
in,
have
right?
the link? Is that
I do
something we can
not
share?
have the link. I'd have to find it. I'd have to like search through my email, I think, to find it. If I do find it, I'll share it with you. You can like, I don't know if you have like show notes or anything for these streams. You could drop it in there.
I love it. Yeah. What I do with, actually, this is a good time to wrap up because it's noon our time and I'm hungry. Yeah. What I do is I put them, I re-upload them to YouTube with your permission, of course, and then
Yeah.
have a little like description of the YouTube channel, and then
Gotcha.
also if
Okay.
there's anything pertinent, I can put it on Twitter and such.
Cool. Yeah. If I find it, I will share it over.
Please do. But yeah, this is great. Just to recap everything we did, we talked a whole bunch about Remix and React Router merging. Thank you, Veet, and of course the team, such as you. Thank you for release managing this stuff. Then we took that idea over to phillyjs Club's current Remix websites on the latest. What was that latest version again of Remix, Matt?
Remix is on 2.10.2.
He says from memory. So yeah, what we did was we switched it from Remix to React Router, which uses Vite, and then switched the dependencies over. There was that fun little Wrangler thing too. We no longer have these. I just removed all the types. We didn't need Vite/clients anymore either.
Yep. Yeah, they don't probably do too
Config
much.
is React Router, and then the big friend, which so far is manual, may in the future be true, or some similar thing, is the array of things to pre-render.
Yep. And then a couple, the import statements got updated, and we temporarily changed the types on use loader data because that generic has not yet made its way over from Remix v2 to React Router v7, but should soon, and definitely will before v7 launches. So that step is not something that folks will need to do when they go to v7 when it does launch.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to add back reload document here for, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it out in the assumption that what you said is going to get fixed.
Yeah, what is your plan here? This is going to just go to a branch and hang out? Like, are you trying to get to a shippable state sooner rather than later?
We don't have any deadline other than the like the 2 or 3 bugs I found that are unrelated to this. The site works. So let's say
I would, because I think the only subsequent changes to get this deployed are update the GitHub workflow, right, which does the wgets today. So those can get ripped out in favor of just using the pre-render config. And then I think there's a GitHub Pages action in that workflow as well. And we probably just have to tell it, so here's the workflow where we build the app, then we actually run a dev server, wait 10 seconds for it to start up, run a bunch of wgets, save them to an out folder. And then we deploy to GitHub Pages and we tell it to publish the out directory. So I think all we need to do is, run pnpm build, which will generate into build client. And then I think get rid of all that wget stuff. We probably still have to write out the CNAME file that's relevant for GitHub Pages.
right there.
That one. And that would go into build client instead of the out directory. And then I'm assuming line 52 would change to /build client as well. But this stuff we should definitely test. Joe, I think, set all this up initially as far as how this deploys out to GitHub Pages, and I've not used that GitHub Pages action before. But hopefully, hopefully that is what's left to get this deployed. But I would say let's put this stuff in a PR. We can both run it by Joe, make sure that's going to work there, and then hopefully I can get those couple little rough edges fixed in our dev branch in the next couple of days, and then we can update this to the newest nightly, and those bugs will be gone.
Amazing. And for the folks following along at home, another symptom of me not streaming enough is I forgot. Normally I try to get a PR, like a draft PR up where I can send people a link in the chat and then post commits to. Completely didn't do that this time. So here's the PR now.
Yep, there's all our code changes. It's not too bad. 18 files. And I'm
And
assuming,
some of them are
most of
just
those
bug
changes are,
fixes.
yeah. And most of those, like that line diff is going to be the lock file.
Yeah. It should give you a files changed and line count that does and then does not include things that
Yes.
are not rendered.
That's how you really beef up your GitHub stats, right? Just change the lock file a bunch.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, this is fantastic. Thanks again, Matt. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
walking me through all this stuff.
No, happy to. This was fun. I'm glad we had a real world site to test this out. Like I said, I do this on little tiny playground sites all the time, but they don't have the same types of like real world edge cases that we run into here.
Yeah. I'm just speaking of edge case, I'm filing to-dos to
Oh yeah.
move to a separate PR. Awesome. Since we're wrapping up, Matt, what should we share for contact links or find out, read more things for you right now?
For me, you
Yeah.
find me on Twitter, brofdog11, just like my Twitch handle here and my GitHub handle. Yeah, that's
Look at this
me.
freaking guy.
Um,
Are those surfboards?
yeah, I don't tweet a lot. I retweet stuff more than I tweet stuff. But yeah, that's me on GitHub and Twitter and across the interwebs. But yeah, mostly you can find me in the Remix Run GitHub issues and in our Discord server. Another good spot to go if anyone's running into issues with their Remix apps or anyone who is daring enough to try React Router v7 nightly stuff. Our Discord is probably the best place to find help from the community there too.
Cool. I'm just searching. You've filed 9 issues and you've commented in over 130 of them. Nice.
What is that? Is open. And I don't what's that? Is that filter just looking for my name in any issue?
Yeah, which actually reminds me.
Advanced GitHub search.
Yeah, there's I always get to the wrong one. Search by comment. There we go. Commenter colon.
Okay.
You've
The tricky part on Remix too is that, and then part of why we're doing this whole React Router v7 is that the vast majority of Remix these days is actually in the React Router repo. So it's a bit annoying for us to like code Remix in React Router because we have to like make changes in React Router, deploy a version of that Remix can depend on, and then make changes in Remix. So this like really we want this stuff to just live in a mono repo, which is what we're doing, moving Remix over to React Router.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And apologies for the incorrect estimation earlier. It's over 400 issue comments each from React Router and Remix for you.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. React Router long predates me too. React Router goes back, 10 years at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's venerable. It's been around.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to have your 1,000th tag.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
2 nightlies from now. I think each nightly gets a tag. So that might happen on Thursday.
Nice. If I have any joy in life this week, it will be from knowing that the 1,000th or 999th nightly in any way was related to me. That's a celebration there, as Book says.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if I can get one of those fixes in today, then the 999th nightly release will have a fix found by you.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thanks again, Matt. I'm going to stop streaming soon, but the last thing one should always remember to do, which I don't always, is to find someone to raid. So I'm going to bring my stream manager over and let's see if there's anyone. They changed this.
What does that mean for a Twitch newbie over here?
Sure. So at the end of your stream, if you do nothing, if you close,
yeah,
the stream stops. Like no one goes anywhere. But if you raid, if you send people over, then it just takes them all to someone else's stream.
Ah, okay. Look at that.
Yeah, and I have interacted with these 2 people in some way in there before, so I'm going to just go to Christoph because I haven't seen enough Zig in my life. So it'll take 10 seconds, and then we will raid. Oh, they're raising money for the Zig Software Foundation. That's cool. All right, well, this was fun, everyone. Thanks for watching, especially folks active in the chat like Lerner and Brooks and Todd and such. So I'll see you all around. Bye.
Yep.
Rating. And